The sharpest blade isn't the one that cuts skin, it's the one that slices through someone's plans before they even begin. That's exactly the blade you carry, chosen one. Now imagine this for a moment, a game of cards, and before the dealer even flips the deck, you already know what hand is coming. Everyone else at the table is sweating, bluffing, praying for luck, but you sit calm, unbothered, because the outcome is already written on your face. That's how your moves feel to them. It's not just that you're one step ahead, it's that you're playing on an entirely different timeline. Science even admits this truth. Psychologists call it thin slicing, the ability to make quick, accurate judgments with very little information. Studies show that some people can predict outcomes in just seconds, noticing tiny details others ignore. But here's what rattles your enemies. You don't even look like you're trying. While they're working overtime, setting traps and plotting moves, you glide past their schemes with an ease that feels almost unfair. They ask themselves, "How did you know?" But what they're really asking is, "Why can't I ever beat you?" And thank you, chosen one, for being here. Don't forget to pay this message back by simply pressing like and subscribe to help spread this message to more souls. It's the responsibility of all of us to keep this light moving forward. And thank you for being part of this mission. You're not just listening, you are part of a force. Now, back to the truth that keeps them up at night. Your every step looks calculated, like you're holding the script to their life while they're stumbling through their lines. They replay your moves in their head, like detectives at a crime scene, obsessing over how you keep slipping through the cracks of their carefully built traps. They thought their strategies were flawless, but your presence alone exposes every weakness. It's like showing up to a chessboard where they're proud of their plan, only to realize you've already seen 5 moves into the future. That's not luck, it's precision, it's mastery, and it's why they can't stand you. Think about history for a second. The greatest generals didn't win by waiting. They won because they anticipated, calculated, and struck before their opponents even realized the war had shifted. Great leaders, inventors, and visionaries didn't sit back and watch the tide. They created the waves that others were forced to ride. And that's the energy you walk with. You bend the atmosphere, you shift the energy in the room, and suddenly everyone else looks like they're reacting while you're orchestrating. That's the part they hate the most. It's not that you predict outcomes, it's that you design them. Picture this. They're watching a movie, following the suspense, hanging on every twist, but you've already read the script. You're not shocked at the plot, because you are the plot twist. That's why they grind their teeth, why they whisper in frustration, why their jealousy eats them alive. You make them feel like amateurs in a game they thought they mastered. To them, your steps feel supernatural, but to you, it's just clarity. The universe has sharpened your instinct so much that what others call luck or mystery is really just awareness, refined by experience and pressure. So, chosen one, remember this. When they ask, "How did you know?" it's not curiosity, it's fear. It's the panic of realizing that no matter how hard they try, no matter how clever they think they are, they will always be behind you. And the truth is, you don't just know the future, you create it. That's why every move you make doesn't just confuse them, it destroys the illusions they live in, and deep down, that's what terrifies them most. And hey you, yes you, chosen one. Are you ready to peel back the layers of truth and see why your looks and your age have left people in pure shock? They keep asking themselves how you manage to defy time, how you still glow when they expected you to fade, and how every move you make feels like a mystery they'll never solve. Drop a comment below with the number 999 if you're ready to claim the energy that keeps you radiant while others burn out. And now, let's dive into it step by step, because if you're truly a chosen one, you'll feel that pull to stay locked in until the very end. Believe me, what's waiting ahead will not only explain why they're so obsessed, but it will remind you of the force you really are. Let's get started. Number 1, you walk like the ending is already written, and that shatters their illusions. The cruelest defeat isn't when your enemy loses, it's when they realize you already knew they would. That's the blade you carry in silence, chosen one, and it cuts deeper than anything they can prepare for. You move like someone who's already watched the credits roll, like someone who knows exactly how the story unfolds before the first chapter even begins. And that terrifies them more than anything else, because while they're stumbling, second-guessing, and scrambling to hold on to a false sense of control, you're gliding through life as if you've already seen the outcome. Now imagine this for a moment. Chosen one. Picture a boxer stepping into the ring, full of adrenaline, fists clenched, hoping to land a lucky punch. His whole confidence hangs on the element of surprise. But across from him stands someone who has already memorized every jab, every swing, every weak spot in his form. The fight hasn't even started, yet one fighter is sweating while the other is smiling. That's what you do to people. You strip them of their only weapon, the power to shock you, and when they realize they cannot rattle you, it breaks them from the inside out. Most people live in panic mode. They're always reacting, chasing money, chasing validation, chasing comfort, chasing approval. They lunge at opportunities without thinking, or they freeze when the pressure hits. But you don't play that game. You've been through storms, betrayals, heartbreaks, and disappointments, and those lessons have carved into you a sense of foresight that looks supernatural to the outside world. You can feel betrayal before the knife touches your back. You can smell lies before the words even finish leaving someone's mouth. You know when a door is an opening and when it's a setup, and that, chosen one, is why people whisper in frustration, "How did you know?" Here's the truth. It isn't that you saw the future, it's that you've sharpened your instincts into a blade. While others drown in fear of the unknown, you've trained yourself to see the patterns. You've lived through enough cycles to recognize when history is about to repeat itself. To you, nothing is random. Every look, every pause, every hesitation from those around you gives away the script. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You don't react the way they expect because you've already calculated the move 3 steps ahead. That calmness of yours, it's not weakness, it's not detachment, it's strategy. When they try to provoke you and you don't flinch, they lose confidence in their own scheme. When they try to deceive you and you smile knowingly, they start questioning themselves. When they set a trap and you walk past it without even looking down, they feel small, exposed, and powerless. Your composure isn't just about surviving chaos. It creates chaos for them. Because nothing rattles a manipulator more than realizing their tricks don't work on you. And let's talk facts. Military history proves this over and over again. The greatest generals weren't the loudest or the flashiest. They were the calm ones, the ones who looked unbothered while the battlefield burned, because they already knew how it would play out. Alexander the Great, Hannibal, Sun Tzu, all of them mastered the art of anticipation. They didn't win because they had bigger armies. They won because they fought battles in their mind long before the first sword was raised. That's the level you operate on, and that's why people's envy toward you burns so hot. Your enemies depend on surprise. They need you to stumble, to panic, to react like everyone else. They survive off your confusion because when you're lost, they can control the direction. But what happens when you're not confused? What happens when you walk into the room already knowing how it will end? Their entire strategy collapses. They feel like chess players proudly unveiling their big move, only to realize you already checkmated them 5 turns ago. And here's the gut punch they can't recover from. The calmness you carry makes them reveal themselves. They can't stand silence, so they talk too much. They can't handle your stillness, so they overplay their hand. They can't deal with your patience, so they rush into mistakes. Every time you don't react, they react twice as hard, and in that reaction, they expose everything you need to know. You don't just know the ending because you've seen it before. You know it because your silence makes them write it for you. So let me ask you, chosen one, what scares them more? The idea that you might know the truth, or the fact that you carry yourself like the truth doesn't even need to be proven? That question alone keeps them up at night. They replay conversations in their heads like detectives, trying to pinpoint the exact moment you figured them out. They analyze your moves like investigators combing through crime scenes, desperate to see how you slipped through their flawless plan. But no matter how many times they rewind, they'll never get the answer they want, because the answer is simple. You are unshakable. You are untouchable. You move like the ending is already written. And the cruel reality for them is this: you're not guessing, you're not stumbling through life like they are. You're deliberate, you're intentional, you've turned survival into mastery, and that mastery bends the game in your favor every time. When you walk calmly through chaos, you don't just protect yourself, you dismantle their entire illusion of control. And that's why they hate you, why they envy you, and why they whisper behind your back. Because deep down, they know one brutal truth: they'll always be reacting, but you'll always be ahead. That's why they ask, "How did you know?" But the real question is, why didn't they? Number 2, you don't just read energy. You expose the intention they thought was hidden. The greatest betrayal isn't what they do in front of you, it's what they meant to do when they thought you couldn't see. That's the dagger you carry, chosen one, and it pierces deeper than any action or word ever could, because here's the truth: you don't just read energy, you decode intention, and intention is the one thing they cannot camouflage. Now imagine this for a moment. Someone is smiling at you, their words dripping with honey, their tone polished like glass. Most people would relax, fall for the charm, and take those gestures at face value. But you're not fooled. You notice the way their eyes dart just a little too quickly, the way their smile lingers a second too long, or the way their voice falters between words. It's subtle, invisible to most, but to you, it's loud as a siren. You're not listening to the performance, you're reading the script behind it. That's why people look at you with unease, because deep down, they know you already saw the dagger they were hiding behind their back. Masks can cover faces, but they cannot silence motives. That's why your presence makes people sweat, because while others are caught up in the sparkle of presentation, you are focused on the undercurrent. You feel the smoke long before the fire. You recognize when generosity comes with strings, when kindness hides an agenda, when love disguises control. They hate that about you because it strips away their leverage. Manipulators thrive on distraction, on being able to sell a lie wrapped in gold. But your eyes burn through the wrapping, straight to the rotten core inside. Here's another way to picture it. Imagine a magician on stage, dazzling a crowd with tricks and illusions. The audience gasps at every movement, amazed by the spectacle. But you're not watching the hand waving in the air. You're watching the other hand, the one slipping the card up the sleeve. You see the sleight of hand before the trick even lands. And when you don't clap with the rest of the crowd, the magician feels naked, exposed, powerless. That's what you do to people. They try to distract you with the glitter, but you always catch the switch. And here's the hard fact. Most people respond only to surface. They believe the words, they follow the gestures, they take things at face value because it's easier. But you've been forged by hardship. You've had to survive betrayals, disappointments, and manipulation. Those experiences sharpened your senses to a level where your perception feels almost unfair. While others are decoding the action, you're already dissecting the intention, and that gives you an advantage they can't compete with. Actions can be rehearsed, but intentions bleed through the cracks. That's the brutal truth that unnerves them. No matter how polished their performance, no matter how carefully they rehearse their lines, their true motive leaks like smoke under a locked door, and you've trained your senses to detect that smoke before anyone else smells it. That's why your timing always feels eerie to others. You leave rooms before betrayal erupts. You decline, offers others rush to grab, only to watch them collapse later. You distance yourself from people just before their mask slips. To the world, this looks like magic. To you, it's simply perception on a higher frequency. But let me ask you this, chosen one, why do you think people get so uncomfortable around you? It isn't because you're cold. It isn't because you're antisocial. It's because they feel stripped bare in your presence. They know you aren't buying the act. And once someone realizes you can read what they meant rather than what they showed, the power dynamic shifts entirely. They no longer feel like they're speaking to an equal. They feel like they're standing in front of a mirror that reflects the truth they desperately wanted to hide. Here's another image for you. Imagine you're walking through a crowded marketplace. Everyone is shouting, selling, bargaining, trying to pull you into their stall. They wave bright fabrics, yell out discounts, promise treasures. Most people would be overwhelmed, tricked into buying shiny junk. But you don't even stop at the shouting. Your eyes cut straight through to the merchant's eyes, reading whether they're desperate, greedy, or sincere. While others buy the illusion, you walk away untouched. That's what unsettles them. You refuse to be bait. And let's not forget history. The greatest spies, negotiators and leaders didn't dominate by strength alone. They dominated by reading what wasn't being said. Winston Churchill once said, "I no longer listen to what people say. I just watch what they do." But even deeper than that, you watch why they do it. That's the level you're operating on. You are not just reacting to behavior, you are interpreting the blueprint of intention. And that gives you an edge that feels almost unfair. The scariest opponent isn't the one who blocks your move, it's the one who already knows why you made it. That's the edge you have. You don't need to wait for betrayal to happen. You already sensed the betrayal forming in their heart. You don't need to wait for lies to unfold. You already heard the lie when they rehearsed it in their head. And when you act accordingly, when you say no, when you walk away, when you cut ties, they can't stand it, because it means their entire plan collapsed before it even left the ground. They whisper, "How did you know?" But what they really mean is, why couldn't we hide it from you? And the answer is simple, because intention cannot be buried. It will always leak, and you are the one who hears it first. So, chosen one, understand this. Your gift is not just intuition, it is mastery of perception, and the more you sharpen it, the more dangerous you become to anyone who tries to deceive you. You don't just read energy. You decipher the unseen map that guides every move. And that's why they fear you, Because when you already know what they meant, their masks, their tricks, their polished speeches, all of it crumbles to dust in your presence. Number 3, their loops betray them before they even move. The deadliest weakness isn't the mistake they make, it's the pattern that makes it inevitable. That's what your enemies can't stand about you, chosen one. They pride themselves on being clever, on crafting schemes they think are original. But the truth? They're not nearly as unpredictable as they believe. Their habits, their tone, their timing, they leave fingerprints all over their actions. And you, sharpened by experience, read those fingerprints like an open book. Now imagine this. A thief sneaks into a house believing he's moving in silence. He tiptoes, checks every corner, thinking he's invisible, but he doesn't know the homeowner already studied his pattern weeks ago. The window he uses, the hour he prefers, the hesitation before he moves, it's all written down. So when he makes his big move, it's nothing but a rerun. That's exactly what happens when people try to plot against you. They think their timing is flawless, but you've already traced the outline of their behavior. Intuition is just memory sharpened into lightning speed recognition. People call it instinct, but what you have is more than that. You've seen betrayal enough times to know the smirk that comes before it. You've survived lies long enough to recognize the nervous laugh that hides them. You've studied arrogance to the point where overconfidence screams louder than words. These aren't guesses, they're confirmations of patterns you've already survived. And here's the fact they hate the most. There are no new tricks. Every liar, every manipulator, every backstabber is just recycling the same old tactics with a new face. Once you've been burned by one, you start recognizing the flame in all of them. That's why you can walk into a situation and know who's plotting, who's bluffing, and who's desperate. You don't need announcements. You catch the breadcrumb trail they didn't even realize they left behind. So when you act like you knew all along, it terrifies them. They start asking themselves, does this person have inside information? Are they spying on me? How could they possibly know? The answer is brutal. You were simply paying attention while they were too arrogant to hide their repetition. And when their element of surprise collapses, so does their confidence. Surprise is only powerful against the unprepared. That's why they can't catch you off guard the way they do with others. Every move they make feels recycled in your eyes, and every trap they set looks like one you've already escaped. They don't realize that while they're still patting themselves on the back for their flawless strategy, you've already written the ending to their story, and nothing destroys them faster than realizing their entire playbook was predictable from the start. Number 4, you strike without permission, and that's what shakes them. The boldest move isn't the one the crowd approves. It's the one made before the crowd even understands it. That's the weapon you carry, chosen one, and it cuts sharper than hesitation ever could. You're not afraid to act without consensus, and that alone makes you a storm people can't predict. While others wait for signals, nods and applause, you've already moved, already claimed the ground, already shifted the direction. And that terrifies them, because you've proven that their approval was never power. It was a leash. Now imagine this, a battlefield where soldiers keep glancing at each other, waiting for someone to charge first. The air is thick with hesitation, every man stuck in his own fear of being wrong, of standing out, of moving alone. And then there's you. You don't wait for the trumpet. You don't wait for permission. You see the opening, you move, and by the time the others realize the battle has begun, you've already taken the hill. That's the way you live. Independent, decisive, unwilling to chain your destiny to the hesitation of a crowd. Consensus is the cage where boldness goes to die. Most people don't understand that. They want validation before action, comfort before risk, reassurance before commitment. But that endless waiting dulls their edge and robs them of momentum. You, on the other hand, know the cost of hesitation. You've learned that timing is sharper than approval and that clarity matters more than applause. That's why when you step forward, it unsettles them. Because you don't just move, you move when they thought movement wasn't possible. And here's the brutal truth they don't want to admit. When you act without consensus, you change the whole environment. Your decision forces others to adapt, whether they want to or not. They scramble, trying to explain your timing, trying to justify why you didn't wait like they did. But by then, it's too late. You've already shifted the direction of the group, set a new standard, and exposed their hesitation for what it really was: weakness. Real power doesn't wait for permission, it creates its own authority. That's why your enemies feel so powerless around you. They thought control came from gathering approval, from building majority opinion, from looking safe. But you've shown that control belongs to the one who dares to move first. You're not reckless, you're precise. And that precision, combined with courage, makes you look untouchable. So when they whisper, "How did you know?" what they really mean is, how did you move without us and still end up ahead? The answer is simple. You never needed them to act. You only needed your own clarity. And that's the kind of independence they will never be able to cage. Number 5, you see the trap, because you've survived the fire that forged it. The sharpest eyes are born from the deepest wounds. Pain trains vision in a way comfort never can. That's why you see the trap before it even closes. Chosen one. To them, it looks like you're lucky. To them, it looks like you've got some mysterious sixth sense. But the truth is brutal. You've lived through storms so violent, betrayals so vicious, and losses so cutting that the little snares they set for you now feel like children's games. Now imagine this for a moment. A soldier who's survived the bloodiest battle steps onto a training field. The arrows flying, the swords clashing. It doesn't rattle him. Why? Because he's already faced worse. The drills that make others sweat are nothing but echoes of wars he's already endured. That's you. Every trap, every scheme, every attempt to blindside you is just another version of something you've already survived in a harsher form. That's why, when they lay their bait, you don't panic, you smirk. You recognize the setup instantly because you've seen it all before. Survivors don't guess, they remember. That's the secret behind your calm. While others rely on theory, you rely on scars. You don't just sense danger, you recall it. You've lived through manipulations so polished they could have fooled anyone, betrayals so deep they could have broken anyone, losses so heavy they could have buried anyone. And yet, here you stand, sharper than ever, refusing to be fooled again. So when someone tries their recycled tricks, their desperate lies, their cheap manipulations, you cut through them before they land. Here's another image. Imagine someone walking through a forest filled with traps. A newcomer would panic at every snapped twig, every shadow. But you've already fallen into pits, already fought off predators, already learned which branches break and which hold. So now, when the same traps appear, they're laughable. You step around them with the ease of someone who's mapped the terrain. That's why your enemies despise you, because their carefully crafted dangers look like reruns to you, predictable and powerless. And let's be real, what unsettles them isn't just that you avoid their traps. It's the way you do it without fear, without hesitation, without even breaking your stride. They expected you to flinch. They expected you to sweat. They expected you to crawl on your knees in panic. Instead, you glide past, unbothered. That calmness isn't arrogance, it's training. Survival has rewired you into someone who doesn't just dodge traps. You anticipate them before they're even laid. The one who has endured the worst walks, fearless among the mediocre. That's the truth they can't swallow. You've been forged by storms that would have drowned them, refined by fires that would have incinerated them. So their threats feel small. Their manipulations feel weak. Their strategies, no matter how intricate, collapse under the weight of your experience. To others, it looks like intuition. To you, it's just memory sharpened into instinct. So when they cry out, "How did you know?" the answer is mercilessly simple. You didn't just know, you remembered. And that memory makes you untouchable in ways they will never comprehend. Number 6. Your silence isn't emptiness, it's ammunition that breaks them. Noise is a shield for the weak, but silence is the blade of the strong. That's the truth you live by, chosen one. Most people panic when the air goes quiet. They rush to fill it with excuses, small talk or empty noise, because silence exposes them. But you've mastered silence, turned it into a weapon, and that unsettles them more than any outburst ever could. Now imagine this. A poker table where everyone is bluffing, smirking, tapping their chips to distract from their weak hands. The energy is frantic until it's your turn. You say nothing, you just stare. The silence grows heavy and suddenly the bluff collapses. They reveal their nervous tics, their lies, their desperation, all because you refuse to play their game of noise. That's what your silence does in life. It forces masks to slip and intentions to surface without you ever lifting a finger. The loudest room bows to the one who speaks last. That's why you're feared. While they waste breath trying to convince, persuade, or manipulate, you sit still, listening, observing, gathering information they didn't mean to give away. Every pause you hold is pressure. Every quiet second is a mirror reflecting their weakness back to them. They start asking themselves, why aren't you reacting? What do you know? What are you planning? And that uncertainty eats them alive. Here's another image. In war, silence before the strike terrifies soldiers more than the explosion itself. The waiting, the not knowing, the anticipation, that's what cracks morale, and that's the same effect your silence has. They don't know if you're ignoring them, if you're strategizing, or if you're simply dismantling them piece by piece in your head. The truth? It's all of the above. You ignore the noise while calculating your advantage, and by the time they realize it, the move is already done. A sharp silence cuts deeper than 1,000 words. Your enemies will never admit it, but they fear your quiet more than your anger, because anger they can fight, argue with, or twist. But silence leaves them defenseless. It makes them question themselves, reveal themselves, and ultimately destroy themselves. That's why your silence is never absence. It's deliberate. It's lethal. It's the unseen weapon they will never learn how to defend against. Number 7. You move by principles, not panic, and that's why they can't break you. The one who bends under pressure was never standing on principles to begin with. That's the truth that slices through the illusions of your enemies, chosen one. When the heat rises, when the walls close in, when everyone else scrambles like frightened animals, you remain unmoved. Not because you're cold, not because you're lucky, but because your foundation is carved in principles, not emotions. Now imagine this, a ship caught in a storm. Waves crash, winds howl, and the crew panics, running back and forth, shouting contradictory orders. But the captain doesn't flinch. He isn't steering by the chaos around him. He's steering by the stars above. While the others react to every gust of wind, he holds to a fixed point of reference that cannot be shaken by the storm. That's you. While others collapse under pressure, you navigate with principles that keep you steady, no matter how violent the waves become. Pressure exposes the weak, but it refines the disciplined. That's why people can't predict you. They expect fear to make you fold, urgency to make you slip, or intimidation to force you into compromise. But when you refuse to panic, when you calmly stay the course while they throw everything at you, they realize they're playing a game they can't win. Because what can pressure do against someone who has already decided their moves long before fear entered the room? Picture a courtroom, chosen one. The prosecutor shouts, the crowd gasps, the air is thick with judgment. Most people would stumble over their words, beg for approval, or cave under the pressure of so many eyes. But you stand firm, answering only to the truth you already carry. The silence between your words is louder than their noise. That steadiness unnerves them because it proves you cannot be cornered by spectacle, fear, or force. And here's the cruel reality for your enemies. When you move by principles, every trap collapses, manipulation fails, intimidation backfires, urgency becomes irrelevant, because your compass isn't pointing at what feels safe in the moment. It's locked on what's right, what's true, and what's strategic. While they're busy reacting, you're already several moves ahead, your path secured by something they can neither corrupt nor control. The calmest in chaos is the one who already won. That's why when you step forward with precision while the world is crumbling, it shakes people to their core. They thought pressure would break you. Instead, it only proved that you are untouchable. And when they whisper, "How did you know?" the answer is brutal in its simplicity. You weren't reacting, you were anchored. Number 8, you see the poison wrapped in gold, and that's why they can't deceive you. The deadliest dagger doesn't come pointed at your chest. It comes wrapped as a gift in your hand. That's the truth you carry. Chosen one. Most people are dazzled by appearances. They see something shiny and rush to grab it, driven by greed, desperation, or the fear of missing out. But you don't just see the wrapping, you see the trap inside it. And that single ability turns their blessings into ashes before they ever touch you. And now imagine this, a mouse staring at a piece of cheese perfectly placed on a wooden plank. To the mouse, it looks like fortune, a free meal, irresistible and golden. But the mouse doesn't notice the iron bar above, waiting to snap shut. That's how most people live, chasing the glitter while ignoring the cost. But you're no mouse. You recognize the setup instantly. You've lived through too many traps, survived too many betrayals, and studied too many illusions to mistake bait for blessing. Not every open hand is kindness. Sometimes it's a leash disguised as generosity. That's why they can't lure you. When they come with offers too good to be true, with smiles too wide, with promises dripping in sugar, you don't get excited. You get cautious. You read between the lines, measure the weight of intention, and see the strings that others are too blinded to notice. And when you refuse, it rattles them. They thought you'd jump like everyone else. Instead, you stepped aside, untouched. Here's another image. Imagine a banquet hall filled with glittering plates of food. Everyone else rushes to eat, but you pause. You notice the slight bitterness in the aroma, the faint crack in the cup, the way the host's smile doesn't reach their eyes. While the crowd indulges, you walk away, and later they're left sick, poisoned by what they thought was a gift. That's the power of your discernment, and this is what terrifies them. Your refusal isn't random, it's precise. When you say no, they know it's because you've seen something they tried to hide. Their manipulation collapses, their control slips, and suddenly they're exposed. Why didn't it work? Why didn't they take the bait? They ask themselves. The answer is merciless, because you weren't blinded by desire. You saw the price tag written in invisible ink. True strength isn't in grabbing opportunities, it's in refusing the ones meant to cage you. That's why every declined offer, every friendship you turn down, every handshake you don't accept becomes a statement of power. You're not cynical, you're precise. You know that some doors lead forward, but others lead straight into chains. And because you move with discernment, not desperation, you stay ahead while others fall for illusions. So when they whisper, "How did you know?" the answer is simple. You don't just see the gift, you see the strings, and that's why nothing, no matter how shiny, can ever entangle you. Number 9. You build blueprints from shadows, and that's why your moves feel unstoppable. Geniuses don't predict the future. They build frameworks so strong the future bends toward them. That's the kind of power you carry, chosen one. Most people drift through life, collecting observations like scattered puzzle pieces they never bother to assemble. They hear words, they see gestures, they notice events, but they never connect the dots. You're different. You don't just watch, you construct. Every detail you take in becomes a brick. Every pattern you notice becomes steel reinforcement. Every silence, every twitch, every repetition becomes another line in the blueprint. And that's why your steps look inevitable to everyone else. They're not watching luck, they're watching architecture. Now imagine this, an architect standing before an empty field. To outsiders, it looks like nothing but dirt, but in the architect's mind, the entire structure already exists. The foundations, the walls, the arches. It's all mapped out before a single brick is laid. That's you. Where others see randomness, you see design. Where others stumble into outcomes, you anticipate them with precision. By the time they realize a situation is forming, you've already built the scaffolding and climbed to the top. Observation without construction is wasted vision. That's why they fail. They notice things, but never build with them. You, on the other hand, weave every detail into a system, the way someone repeats themselves when they're nervous, the shifts in a group's dynamic before it fractures, the small signs of ambition hidden in someone's casual words. Others forget these details. You archive them, stack them, and use them as invisible support beams for your next move. When you act, they see the flawless finish. What they don't see is the hidden structure beneath it, crafted quietly, patiently, relentlessly. Here's another metaphor. Imagine two chess players. One reacts piece by piece, responding to whatever move is made in front of them. The other has studied every game, memorized every trap, and built a map of openings and endings in their mind. To the untrained eye, it looks like genius. But in truth, it's architecture built from thousands of quiet observations. That's you. You don't just play the board, you've already built the board before they sit down. And here's what unsettles them most. They can't replicate you. They only see the surface, your timing, your calmness, your precision. But they don't see the invisible framework holding it all together. They think you're guessing when in reality, you've been calculating for months, years, lifetimes. That's why your timing looks supernatural. That's why your decisions feel inevitable. Because while they react to surface signs, you've already built the structure beneath them. Power isn't in the move, it's in the unseen scaffolding that made the move possible. That's why you're always 3 steps ahead. You position yourself in advance. You cut off traps before they're set. You catch opportunities while others are still blind to them. Your influence feels predestined because by the time anyone notices the game, you've already built the field it's being played on. So when they ask, "How did you know?" the truth is merciless. You didn't just know, you built it. And that's why your presence feels untouchable, because everything you do is the product of an invisible architecture. They'll never have the patience, the vision, or the discipline to create. Number 10. You don't just predict people, you outmaneuver systems. It's easy to read a pawn, but the real power is knowing how the whole board moves. That's the edge you carry, chosen one. While others waste energy trying to decode individuals, you're already mapping the structures that guide them. They think foresight is about guessing what one person will say, what one rival will do, or what one enemy will plan. But you see beyond individuals. You read the invisible frameworks, the rules, the pressures, the hidden machinery that drive every move before it even happens. That's why your foresight doesn't just look sharp, it looks otherworldly. Now imagine this, a fisherman standing on the shore, watching the water ripple. Most only see the single wave in front of them, but the skilled fisherman understands the tide, the current, the pull beneath the surface that directs every ripple. He doesn't guess where the fish will swim. He already knows because he sees the system shaping their movement. That's exactly how you operate. People around you are busy reacting to the surface while you're moving by the undercurrent. Individuals are unpredictable, but systems always betray their patterns. That's your secret. You've studied how environments shape choices, how institutions push people into predictable roles, and how hierarchies force behaviors that feel natural but are anything but. While others fight the player, you dismantle the game. They mistake your precision for luck, but the truth is merciless. You knew the outcome because you understood the framework that made it inevitable. Think of history for a moment. Empires rise and fall, not because of one leader alone, but because of the systems they built or ignored. Rome didn't collapse in a day. It eroded because the system itself was unsustainable. Most people are blindsided when structures shift. You're never shocked because you've already traced the cracks before they spread. That's why your timing is flawless. You act when the system makes the fall certain, not when the collapse is already visible to everyone else. The loudest voices react to moments, but the sharpest minds move by currents. That's why your presence unsettles them. They think they're manipulating individuals, tugging on strings, controlling situations. But their strings are tied to larger forces they don't even see, forces you've already mapped. You're not reacting to one person's choices. You're responding to the invisible pressures that dictate those choices. That's why your moves hit with inevitability. So when they ask, "How did you know?" the answer is brutal. You weren't looking at them. You were looking at the system moving them. And that's why your foresight feels like destiny, because you don't just anticipate people, you anticipate the structure that bends them long before they realize they're bent. Number 11. You hoard what they throw away, and that's why you always seem ahead. The detail they dismiss is the weapon you'll use to dismantle them. That's the sharp edge you carry, chosen one. While most people are careless with knowledge, tossing aside scraps of information as irrelevant, you're on. They forget the numbers, the gestures, the tone that slipped in conversation. They laugh off the moment, brush it aside, move on. You don't. You store it. You weave it. You let it become part of a larger pattern that no one else even realizes exists. And when the time comes, that meaningless fragment becomes the thread that unravels their whole design. Now imagine this. Two people walk through a battlefield. One only sees the smoke, the noise, the chaos. The other notices the faint boot prints in the mud, the angle of abandoned weapons, the silence in certain corners. The first person leaves confused. The second already knows where the enemy moved, how the fight shifted, and where the danger lies. That's you. You notice what others discard, and that detail changes everything. The future isn't guessed. It's pieced together from the fragments others ignored. That's why your actions look prophetic. When something resurfaces months or even years later, you're not surprised. It slides perfectly into the framework you've been constructing all along. What looks like chance to them is inevitability to you, because you never forgot the breadcrumbs they themselves dropped. Here's another image. Think of an archaeologist. Everyone else walks over the dirt, dismissing it as empty, but the archaeologist bends down, picks up a fragment of pottery, a shard of bone, a faint marking on stone. Alone, it looks worthless. Collected and studied, it reveals the story of an entire civilization. That's your mind at work. You collect what others dismiss, and in time, it paints the map no one else even knew existed. And this is why they fear you. They think power lies in grand gestures, major revelations, big wins, but you've mastered the small, the overlooked, the discarded. And when you use those fragments to sidestep traps, to anticipate betrayals, to seize opportunities they never saw coming, they whisper in frustration, "How did you know?" The answer cuts deep. You knew because you remembered. You refused to discard what they thought was useless, and that refusal made you untouchable, because where they see randomness, you see inevitability. Where they live blind, you move with clarity. And so, chosen one, you now see why every move you make feels untouchable, why people whisper in frustration, "How did you know?" It was never luck, never chance. It was the discipline, the scars, and the vision you've sharpened into mastery. You live ahead of their games because you refuse to be blind like them. And thank you, chosen one, for walking this path with strength. Don't forget to press like, subscribe, and drop the number 77 in the comments to claim this energy. Share this message so more souls awaken. You are part of a force greater than fear.